So, Edward, there are a lot of questions about the history of the island, mostly around the time you arrived. Is that so? Well, yeah. Well, see, recently there's been this new Thomas film called The Adventure Begins, and it says that Thomas arrived fifth, even though he's the number one. And Audrey did say that you and Thomas arrived first, and there's even a black and white photo to show it. Well, not entirely. Oh, well, what actually happened then? Well, you see, me and this other E2 tank engine did arrive in 1915, but it wasn't Thomas. It was Timothy. I'm sure you've all heard of him by now. Well, yeah, but that's another thing we never really understood. It says that he was a tank engine that fell off the viaduct whilst it was being built, but didn't you and Thomas build the rails to the viaduct? If he was number 0 and Thomas was number 1, how could he fall off rails that weren't even put there yet? Well, you see, those pictures are actually of me and Timothy. However, since he was actually numbered 1 and not 0 because he was the first tank engine bought for the North Western Railway, and the fact that the pictures are black and white, it is easy to confuse him with Thomas. I don't know where the rumour of him being numbered 0 came from, but what have you. So, how did the engines arrive then if Thomas wasn't the first? Well, in 1915 it was Timothy and me. Then in 1919 it was 98462, 87546 and Henry. Then in 1923 Gordon arrived. Winston was another loaned engine from the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway. He arrived not too long after 98462 and 87546 did. As the years went on, things seemed okay, until one awful night in 1924, Timothy was asked to take a passenger train. He zoomed down the line, but when he got to Gordon's Hill he realised that his brakes had failed. His driver and fireman did everything, he did too, but it was no use. He was going so fast that his wheels jumped the rails just before the viaduct, and he and his passenger train fell down the side of it. The Fat Controller was devastated. He had lost a lot of money from that accident. Then the railway became really busy. He was hoping that 98462, 87546 and Winston could do the job, whilst he looked for another engine to replace Timothy. However, around that time, the three engines railways were getting extremely busy, and their railways wanted them back. The Fat Controller did everything he could. He tried telling them that they needed them, but the other railways needed them too. So, in December of 1924, Winston, 98462 and 87546 were sent back to the other railway. This left the main line with only 3 engines, me, Gordon and Henry. The Wellsworth and Sudbury engines were still around, but their line was busy too, so they couldn't come to help out. It was apparent that we needed 2 more engines. We didn't know where to find them though. At the start of 1925, the Fat Controller bought a mixed traffic engine named James. Winston had left a good impression of the Class 28s in the Fat Controller's mind, so the Fat Controller bought another one. However, unlike Winston, James wasn't really looked after before he came to Sodor. His parts were worn and of course he had his wooden brake blocks. The Fat Controller had a little bit of money left. He could either use it to repair James and give him proper brakes, or he could buy a new engine. The Fat Controller figured that if they bought a new engine, they would be able to make more money and then repair James. As long as they kept James off as many passenger trains unless absolutely necessary, it should be okay. So, the Fat Controller bought another E2 tank engine. So, if James was bought before Thomas was, then how come he's number 5 and Thomas is number 1? Well, Thomas was painted number 1 to commemorate Timothy. However, he was too young to be told that. Wouldn't he not have been about 10 or so around that time? Yes, but he wasn't like most E2s. He was built specifically for the Fat Controller's railway, which is why he's a lot shorter than his brothers and sisters, and is why he was a lot younger when he arrived too. Whoa, but we really didn't expect that. That's very different from what we thought. Thank you, Edward. Oh, it's no problem at all. If you ever need me to answer any more questions, then you can either come back here in the evening, or I think I'm free for an hour at about 3:30 to 4:30. I should be at Wellsworth by then. But I hope I gave you the information you needed. Thank you again, Edward. Hope to see you soon. Goodbye.